The humid Lagos night clung to my skin like a second layer, heavy and oppressive, as I stood on the cracked pavement of Olodi-Apapa Road. The distant hum of generators and the occasional blare of a danfo horn filled the air, but they couldn't drown out the echo of Papa Adekunle's voice. "Burden," he'd spat, his eyes glinting with a rage I'd rarely seen in my 24 years. His words sliced through the Christmas Eve festivities, sharper than the harmattan wind that whipped dust into my eyes. It was supposed to be a night of celebration. The compound was alive with the aroma of jollof rice and fried turkey, the clinking of star beer bottles, and the laughter of neighbors gathered under a flickering streetlight. Inside our cramped, peeling bungalow, the mood was anything but festive. I'd come home from a grueling 12-hour shift at the Acacia textile factory, my fingers sore from stitching seams, my back aching from hunching over the machine. All I wanted was a plate of food and a moment of peace. Instead, I got an ambush. "Elara, you're late again," Mama Ifeoma snapped as I stepped into the parlor, her voice cutting through the blare of the DSTV showing a Nollywood Christmas special. She sat on the worn-out sofa, her wrapper tied loosely, her eyes narrowed. Femi, my 16-year-old brother, lounged beside her, scrolling on his phone, barely acknowledging my presence. "I was held back at work, Mama," I said, dropping my bag by the door. "They needed extra hands for a last-minute order." "Excuses," Papa bellowed from the dining table, where he nursed a bottle of Gulder. His face was flushed, his shirt unbuttoned to reveal a sheen of sweat. "You think you can waltz in here whenever you like? This house isn't a hotel." I bit my lip, swallowing the urge to point out that I'd been at work, not a party. 4 years, I'd poured every kobo of my earnings into this house. Rent, food, Femi's school fees, Papa's endless business ideas that never went anywhere. Yet, here I was, the villain of their story. "Papa, I'm sorry," I said, my voice low, trying to diffuse the tension. "I'll heat up the food now." But Mama wasn't done. "You're always sorry, Elara. Sorry doesn't pay the bills. Sorry doesn't keep this family together." The word stung, but what came next was worse. Papa stood, his chair scraping against the concrete floor. "You're a burden," he said, his voice low and venomous. "Always have been. You think you're doing us a favor by working? We'd be better off without you dragging us down." The room spun. I looked at Mama, hoping for a defense, but she averted her eyes, her lips pursed. Femi didn't even look up from his phone. The weight of their silence crushed me. Before I could respond, Papa stormed to my room, yanked my suitcase from under the bed, and began tossing my clothes into it. "Papa, what are you doing?" I cried, rushing after him. "Get out," he roared, shoving the suitcase into my arms. "If you're so independent, go live your life. We don't need you here." Tears burned my eyes as he dragged me to the door, Mama trailing behind, muttering half-hearted protests. "Adekunle, maybe she can stay until morning," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. "No," Papa snapped. "She's out tonight." And so, under the dim glow of a streetlight, I stood on Olodi-Apapa Road, clutching my suitcase, the word burden ringing in my ears. The Christmas lights twinkling in the distance felt like a cruel mockery of my shattered world. The next morning, I woke to the unfamiliar sound of roosters crowing and the chatter of early risers in Adekunle, where I'd found a cheap room to rent. My new reality was a far cry from the family home I'd left behind, but as I sat on the thin mattress, staring at the cracked walls, I couldn't shake the memories of how I'd become their invisible bank. 4 years, my salary from the textile factory had been the family's lifeline. Every month, I'd hand over nearly everything I earned. Mama's urgent needs were a bottomless pit, new wrappers for church, money for her women's group, or just a little something for her hair. Femi's school fees were always just a bit short, despite me paying the bulk of them. And Papa? His business ventures were the stuff of legend. Fish farming that never started, a poultry project that ended with stolen chickens, a barbing salon that collapsed when he drank the profits. I remembered one evening, months ago, when I dared to question the endless drain. We were in the parlor, the DSTV blaring as usual, Femi sprawled on the couch, and Mama sorting through a pile of fabric she'd bought for her tailoring side hustle. "Mama, maybe we can cut back a bit," I'd said cautiously, holding my payslip, which showed a meager balance after deductions. "The electricity bill is high, and I'm barely saving anything." Mama's head snapped up, her eyes flashing. Cut back. Ilara, you think this family runs on air? You think I enjoy asking you for money? I'm not saying that, I said, my voice trembling. I work so hard, and it's all gone before I can even. Enough. Papa interrupted, storming in from the backyard, where he'd been tinkering with another doomed project. You think you're the only one working? I'm trying to build something for this family, and all you do is complain. Femi snickered, not looking up from his phone. Sis, chill. You're acting like you're doing us a favor. The betrayal stung. I'd sacrificed dreams of furthering my education, of moving out, of building a life for myself, all to keep them afloat. Yet, to them, I was just a cash machine, expected to dispense without question. Now, sitting in my adjugunal room, the memory fueled a quiet anger. I wasn't their bank anymore. They'd made that clear when they threw me out. But the hurt lingered, a dull ache that made me question everything I'd believed about family. The slap still burned in my memory, as vivid as the moment it happened. It was just hours before Papa's outburst on Christmas Eve, the spark that ignited the fire. I'd come home exhausted, my hands stained with dye from the factory, and found Mama and Femi in the parlor, as usual, glued to the DSTV. Femi, have you thought about getting a part-time job? I'd asked, trying to keep my tone light. He was 16, old enough to contribute something, anything, to ease the burden on me. The room went silent. Mama's eyes narrowed, and Femi's head jerked up from his phone, his mouth open in disbelief. A job, he said, laughing. Sis, I'm in school. You want me to be a vulcanizer or what? I'm just saying, I pressed, you could help out. Maybe tutor younger kids or... The crack of Mama's hand across my cheek cut me off. The sound echoed in the small room, louder than the Nollywood drama on the TV. My face stung, but the shock hurt more. Disrespectful child! Mama shrieked, her voice trembling with rage. You think you can come here and tell my son what to do? You, who can't even keep this family together. I stood frozen, my hand on my cheek, tears welling up. Mama, I didn't mean. Don't talk back, she snapped, pointing a trembling finger at me. You think because you bring money, you're the head of this house? You're nothing but a girl who doesn't know her place. Femi smirked, returning to his phone. Papa, who'd been in the kitchen, poked his head in but said nothing, his silence a louder betrayal than Mama's slap. I'd swallowed my tears and retreated to my room, the sting of her hand a prelude to the exile that would follow hours later. Now, in my adjugunal room, the memory of that slap fueled a fire I hadn't known I possessed. It wasn't just about the pain, it was the dismissal, the erasure of everything I'd done for them. I wasn't just a burden, I was invisible, except when they needed something. My new room in adjugunal was a 10 by 10 concrete box with a single window that overlooked a noisy courtyard. The walls were stained with years of neglect, the paint peeling like old skin. The hum of generators and the chatter of neighbors, market women haggling, children laughing, men arguing over a football match, filled the air, a stark contrast to the oppressive silence of my family's home. It was suffocating, yet strangely liberating. I sat on the thin mattress, my suitcase still unpacked, and let the reality sink in. I was alone. No Mama to nag me, no Papa to belittle me, no Femi to ignore me. But the freedom came with a price, a deep, aching loneliness that settled in my chest like a stone. That first night, I couldn't sleep. The generator outside sputtered and died, plunging the compound into darkness. I lit a candle, its flickering light casting shadows on the walls. I thought of the family I'd left behind, their faces flashing in my mind. Mama's sharp tongue, Papa's volatile temper, Femi's indifference. Had they ever loved me, or was I just a means to an end? A knock on the door startled me. It was Mama Ngozi, the landlady, a stout woman with a warm smile and a no-nonsense demeanor. Ilara, you know go eat, she called through the door. I made egusi soup, and my children know go finish am. I hesitated, then opened the door. Thank you, Ma, I said, my voice hoarse. She studied me, her eyes softening. You look like you carry the world on your head. Come eat. Tomorrow, you tell me what happened. Over a plate of steaming egusi and gari, I found myself opening up to her, the words spilling out like water from a broken tap. I told her about Papa's words, Mama's slap, the years of sacrifice. She listened, nodding, her face a mix of empathy and indignation. "Family no suppose treat you like that," she said, shaking her head. "You be strong girl, Ilara. You go find your way." Her kindness was a balm, but it couldn't erase the ache. As I lay in bed that night, the candle long extinguished, I felt the weight of my broken heart. But somewhere, deep within, a spark flickered, a resolve to reclaim my life. The next morning, I woke to the chaos of Adekunle. Hawkers shouting, motorcycles roaring, the smell of akara frying in the compound. My phone buzzed with missed calls from Mama and a single text from Femi. "Sis, where you day?" "Mama day worry." I stared at the message, my thumb hovering over the reply button. Worry. They hadn't worried when Papa threw me out, when Mama slapped me, when Femi laughed at my suggestion. The spark from the previous night grew into a flame, a quiet but fierce defiance. Why should I keep fueling a system that saw me as nothing more than a burden? The thought was intoxicating, a rebellion I hadn't dared to embrace before. I thought of the DSTV subscription, the electricity tokens, the water bills, all in my name, all paid with my sweat. They'd taken it all for granted, lounging in the comfort I provided while I scraped by. I opened my banking app, my heart pounding. The DSTV subscription was the first to go. A few clicks, and I cancelled the auto-renewal. I imagined them in the parlor, the screen going blank, Papa cursing, Mama panicking, Femi whining. The thought brought a small, guilty smile to my lips. "Ilara, you day okay?" Mama Ngozi's voice broke through my thoughts. She stood at my door, holding a tray of fried yam. "You look like you day planned something." I laughed, the sound surprising me. "Maybe I am," I said, accepting the yam. "I'm just figuring things out." She raised an eyebrow but didn't press. "Whatever you do, make sure it's for you," she said, her voice firm. "You know owe nobody nothing." Her words echoed in my mind as I ate, the yam warm and comforting. The defiance grew, no longer just a spark but a fire. I wasn't just cutting off their DSTV, I was cutting off their hold on me. For the first time in years, I felt a flicker of power, a sense that I could rewrite my story. As I washed the plate, my phone buzzed again. Another text from Mama, "Ilara, the DSTV no day work. You pay am." I didn't reply. Let them figure it out. Let them feel the weight of my absence. The nightmare was just beginning. The Adekunle morning was alive with the usual cacophony, blaring horns, the sizzle of akara frying in the compound, and the rhythmic thump of a neighbor's pestle pounding yam. I sat on my thin mattress, my phone glowing in the dim light of my room, its cracked screen a reminder of my own fractured life. The decision to cancel the DSTV subscription last night had been impulsive, but now, in the harsh light of day, it felt like a declaration of war. I imagined them in the family bungalow on Olodi-Apapa Road, gathered in the parlor, staring at a blank TV screen. Papa would be pacing, his voice booming with curses. Mama would be wringing her hands, blaming everyone but herself. Femi, glued to his phone, would probably be whining about missing his favorite Premier League match. The thought brought a strange mix of guilt and satisfaction, like biting into a bitter fruit that was somehow sweet. My phone buzzed, snapping me out of my reverie. A message from Mama, "Ilara, why the DSTV no day work? You pay the bill or what?" No greeting, no apology, just the same entitled tone that had grated on me for years. I stared at the message, my thumb hovering over the reply button. Part of me wanted to call, to explain, to beg for their understanding. But the memory of Papa's voice, "Burden," and Mama's stinging slap silenced that urge. Instead, I opened the DSTV app and double-checked the cancellation. The subscription, paid from my meager factory salary for years, was officially terminated. I pictured their confusion, the sudden silence in their living room, and a small rebellious smile crept onto my face. This was just the beginning. A knock on my door startled me. It was Mama Ngozi, my landlady, balancing a tray of steaming mwamwa. "Ilara, you no go eat," she called, her voice warm but probing. "You day look like person way day plot something big." I laughed, the sound lighter than I'd expected. "Maybe I am, Ma," I said, opening the door to let her in. The spicy aroma of the muamua filled the room, a small comfort in my chaotic new world. She set the tray on my small table, her eyes narrowing as she studied me. "Wetin day happen? You no talk since yesterday, but your face day tell story." I hesitated, then let the words spill out. "I cancelled the DSTV for my family's house," I admitted, my voice low. "They've been using my money for years, and now they can figure it out themselves." Mama Ngozi's eyebrows shot up, but a slow grin spread across her face. "Na so. You day show them say you no be their doormat again. But be careful, eh? Family fit be like snake. Dem go bite when you no expect." Her words lingered as I ate, the muamua warm and grounding. She was right, there'd be consequences. But for the first time, I wasn't afraid. I was ready to make them feel the weight of their ingratitude. The next day, I took the rebellion further. The prepaid electricity token for the family house was next on my list. For years, I'd been the one to recharge it, ensuring the fans hummed through Lagos sweltering nights, the bulbs glowed, and Mama's endless laundry loads ran without interruption. They'd never thanked me, never acknowledged the hours I spent hunched over a sewing machine to keep their lives comfortable. Sitting at a small buka across from my new home, I sipped a bottle of Fanta, the cold liquid soothing my parched throat. The buka was alive with chatter, market women haggling, Okada riders arguing over fares, and a radio blaring Fuji music. I opened the electricity company's app and stared at the option to skip the recharge. My finger hovered, guilt tugging at me. What if Femi needed light to study? What if Mama's tailoring work suffered? Then I remembered Christmas Eve, Papa's cruel words, and Mama's slap. The guilt evaporated. I clicked skip, and just like that, the token expired. I imagined their house plunging into darkness, the fan stalling, the fridge warming, Papa's curses echoing through the compound. Let them sweat, I thought. Let them fumble in the dark, just as they'd left me to fend for myself. That evening, I sat with Mama Ngozi and her children in the courtyard, sharing a plate of fried plantain and groundnut. Her youngest, Tund, a gap-toothed 7-year-old, was telling a story about a goat that stole his teacher's wig, his animated gestures making us laugh. The camaraderie was a stark contrast to the cold silence of my family's home. "You day quiet tonight," Mama Ngozi said, passing me a piece of plantain. "Wetin you do now?" I grinned, unable to hide my mischief. "The electricity token," I said. "I didn't recharge it." Her laughter was loud enough to turn heads in the courtyard. "Chai, Ilara. You day play hard oh. Dem go no say you no be small girl again." But as I laughed with her, my phone buzzed again. Another message from Mama. "Ilara, no light for house. Wetin day happen? You day punish us." The accusation stung, but I didn't reply. This wasn't punishment, it was justice. They'd taken my light for years. Now it was their turn to sit in the dark. The rebellion was addictive. Each act of defiance felt like peeling back a layer of the invisible chains that had bound me to my family's demands. The water bill was next. Mama's endless laundry, Femi's long showers, Papa's insistence on washing his old Peugeot every weekend. They treated water like it grew on trees, never questioning who paid for it. That person had always been me. I sat on a plastic chair in the compound, the morning sun already blistering, as I called the waterboard. "Good morning, Ma," I said, my voice steady. "I'm relocating, and I need to disconnect the water supply to my old address." The woman on the other end, her voice crackly through the phone, didn't ask many questions. "Address," she barked. I gave it, my heart racing as I pictured the taps in their house sputtering to a trickle, then stopping entirely. By noon, it was done. The waterboard confirmed the disconnection, and I leaned back, a strange calm washing over me. I imagined Mama standing at the sink, her hands soapy, cursing as the water dried up. Femi, probably mid-shower, would be left with a bucket of cold reality. Papa would storm out, blaming everyone but himself. They'd have to trek to the borehole down the street, joining the long queue of neighbors with jerrycans, something they'd always considered beneath them. That afternoon, I ran into Bio Dunn, a neighbor from the compound, at the market where I'd gone to buy tomatoes. He was a lanky mechanic with a quick smile, always tinkering with his motorcycle. "Ilara, I hear say you move out," he said, leaning against a stall. "Your people day talk oh. Say you abandoned them. I bristled, but kept my tone light. Abandon? Bio done, you know how much I do for them. They call me burden, throw me out, and now I'm the bad one. He raised his hands, chuckling. No vex, I just day say wetin I hear. But you day shine for Adekunle. You no look like person way day carry load again. His words were a small validation, a reminder that my rebellion wasn't just about hurting them, it was about freeing myself. But as I walked back to my room, my phone buzzed again. A new message from Femi. Sis, no water oh. How we go manage? I didn't reply. Let them manage, I thought. I had managed alone on Christmas Eve, and now it was their turn. The calls started the next morning, relentless and desperate. Mama's number flashed on my screen, again and again, until I finally answered. Her voice was a theatrical mix of panic and anger, the kind she'd always used to manipulate me. Ilara, she wailed, her voice crackling through the phone. What have you done? No light, no water, no DSTV. You want to kill us? You want your mother to suffer? I leaned against the wall of my room, the peeling paint rough under my fingers, and felt a strange detachment. Mama, you called me a burden, I said, my voice calm but firm. You and Papa threw me out. I'm just doing what you wanted, living my own life. She gasped, then launched into a tirade. You ungrateful child. After everything we've done for you, you think you can just cut us off like this? Everything you've done? I shot back, the fire in my chest flaring. Mama, I paid for everything. The rent, the bills, Femi's fees, everything. And you slapped me for asking him to help. There was a long silence, broken only by her sniffles. When she spoke again, her voice was softer, almost pleading. Ilara, please. We need you. Come back. We can talk. Her tears, once a weapon that could bend me to her will, were now just noise. I hung up without another word, my heart pounding. 4 years, I'd crumbled under her emotional blackmail, but not anymore. The power had shifted, and I wasn't giving it back. That evening, I joined Mom Ngozi and her children for dinner in the courtyard. The air was thick with the scent of pepper soup, and Tund was telling another wild story, this time about a ghost in his school. I laughed, the sound genuine, but my mind was on Mama's call. Her tears hadn't moved me, and that realization was both liberating and unsettling. You day think too much, Mom Ngozi said, nudging me. Whatever your family day do, no let dem drag you back. I nodded, grateful for her wisdom. But as I lay in bed that night, my phone silent for the first time in hours, I knew this was far from over. They'd come for me again, and I had to be ready. Papa's calls came the next day, a storm of fury that made Mama's tears seem tame. He didn't bother with texts. Instead, my phone was flooded with voicemails, each one more explosive than the last. I sat on a stool in the compound, the morning sun baking my skin, and played the first one. Ilara, you useless girl, his voice boomed, so loud I had to lower the volume. You think you can destroy this family? You cut off the light, the water, the DSTV? You're a disgrace. If I see you, I'll deal with you myself. The threats continued, a string of insults that painted me as the villain in his twisted narrative. I deleted the voicemail before it ended, my hands shaking not with fear but with a cold, resolute anger. Papa's fury had once terrified me, his towering presence and booming voice enough to make me shrink. But now, it was just noise, like Mama's tears. Another voicemail followed, this one shorter but no less venomous. You think you're big now, eh? You'll regret this, Ilara. You'll crawl back begging. I deleted it, too, my jaw tight. Crawl back. Never. They'd thrown me out, called me a burden, and now they were reaping the consequences. I wasn't their ATM anymore, and Papa's threats couldn't change that. That afternoon, I ran into Bio Dunn again at the buka, where I'd gone to escape the confines of my room. He was sipping a bottle of Maltina, his motorcycle parked nearby. Ilara, your Papa day vex oh, he said, shaking his head. I hear him shouting for junction yesterday, saying you don curse the family. I rolled my eyes, stirring my bowl of egusi soup. Let him shout, I said. He's the one who cursed me first. Bio Dunn chuckled, but his eyes were serious. "Just watch your back, eh? Your papa no be small man when he dey angry." His warning lingered as I walked home, the weight of Papa's voicemails heavy in my mind. But instead of fear, I felt a surge of defiance. They'd underestimated me for years, but I was done being invisible. I was their nightmare now, and I wasn't backing down. The ajagunal morning was a riot of sound, roosters crowing, Okada riders revving their engines, and the sharp laughter of children chasing a stray football across the compound. I sat on my worn-out mattress, the air thick with the scent of burning charcoal from a neighbor's stove, my phone buzzing relentlessly in my hand. Femi's texts had started at dawn, each one more desperate than the last, a stark contrast to his usual indifference. "Sis, please, I can't study in the dark," the first message read. "Mama is shouting. Papa is mad. Fix the light nah." I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the reply button. 4 years, Femi had barely acknowledged me, his nose buried in his phone while I slaved away at the Acacia textile factory to pay his school fees. Now, with the electricity gone, the water cut off, and the DSTV silent, he was suddenly aware of my existence. The irony was almost laughable. Another text came through, "Sis, this no fair. I dey beg you. We no get water, nothing. Help us." A flicker of sympathy stirred in my chest. Femi was only 16, caught in the crossfire of our parents' dysfunction. But then I remembered his smirk when Mama slapped me, his laughter when I suggested he get a job. Where was his sympathy when Papa threw me out on Christmas Eve, my suitcase tumbling onto the dusty Olodi-Apapa road? The flicker died, replaced by a cold resolve. I typed a single word, "manage," and hit send before tossing the phone onto the mattress. Let them feel the weight of my absence, just as I'd felt the weight of their ingratitude for years. A knock on my door broke the silence. It was Mama Ngozi, my landlady, her face creased with concern as she balanced a tray of boiled yam and pepper sauce. "Ilara, you no dey eat enough," she said, stepping into my cramped room. "Wetin dey worry you now?" I sighed, accepting the tray. "Femi's texting me, begging for help," I said, my voice flat. "They're struggling without light and water." Mama Ngozi snorted, settling onto a plastic chair. "Struggling? Chai, dem never see struggle. You a day work like donkey for dem call you burden. Now dem day cry. Let dem taste their own medicine." Her words were a balm, reinforcing the fire in my chest. "You're right," I said, slicing into the yam. "They never saw me until I stopped giving." She nodded, her eyes gleaming with approval. "You day learn, Ilara. Keep your heart strong. Dem go come crawling soon." As I ate, the compound's noise faded into the background, and I felt a strange clarity. Femi's texts weren't a plea for help, they were a demand for me to return to my role as their invisible bank. But I was done playing that part. The next day, the consequences of my rebellion ripened like overripe mangoes, heavy and unavoidable. I was at the market, weaving through stalls piled high with tomatoes and okra, the air thick with the scent of smoked fish and sweat, when my phone buzzed with a call from Bio Dunn, the mechanic from my old neighborhood. "Ilara, you hear wetin happen," he said, his voice urgent over the crackle of the line. "Your papa landlord don serve dem eviction notice. Dem no pay rent for 2 months." My heart didn't flutter. Not even a twitch. 4 years, I'd covered the rent for our Olodi-Apapa bungalow, dipping into my factory wages to keep a roof over their heads. Without my contributions, they'd crumbled, just as I'd known they would. "Thanks for telling me, Bio Dunn," I said, my voice steady as I paid for a bag of onions. "They'll figure it out." He chuckled, but there was unease in it. "You day cold Ilara. Your papa day shout everywhere, saying you curse dem. Be careful, I thanked him again and hung up, the market's chaos swirling around me, hawkers shouting prices, a radio blaring Afrobeat, the heat pressing against my skin. The eviction notice was inevitable, a domino I'd set in motion when I stopped paying their bills. Yet, instead of guilt, I felt a quiet satisfaction. They'd made their bed, and now they had to lie in it. Back in my room, I sat with Mama Ngozi's daughter, Amaka, a bright-eyed teenager who loved braiding hair and gossiping. She was practicing cornrows on a mannequin head, her fingers deft as she worked. "Ilara, I hear say your family days suffer," she said, glancing up. My friend for your old street say dem day pack their things already. I nodded, stirring a pot of vegetable stew on my small stove. They got an eviction notice, I said, keeping my tone neutral. They didn't pay the rent. Amaka's eyes widened, but she grinned. Chai, you know they play. You just cut them off like that. Not like that, I said, an edge creeping into my voice. They called me a burden, threw me out. I'm just letting them live without me. She whistled, her fingers pausing. You get liver oh. But whatten you go do if dem come beg you? The question hung in the air, heavy as the steam rising from the pot. I didn't have an answer yet, but the fire in my chest burned brighter. They'd underestimated me, but they were learning now. 3 days later, they came. I was sweeping my room, the broom scratching against the concrete floor, when a knock, sharp and insistent, rattled the door. I opened it to find Mama, Papa, and Femi standing in the courtyard, their faces a mix of desperation and pride. Mama's eyes were red and swollen, her wrapper tied haphazardly. Papa's jaw was tight, his shirt rumpled, a far cry from his usual polished swagger. Femi, for once, wasn't on his phone, his gaze fixed on the ground. Ilara, Mama said, her voice trembling with forced calm. We need to talk. I leaned against the doorframe, my broom still in hand, and studied them. The humid air carried the scent of fried plantain from a neighbor's stove, and the compound was alive with the usual chatter, but a heavy silence hung between us. For a moment, I saw the family I'd once loved, the shared meals, the rare laughter, the moments when we felt like a unit. But those memories were overshadowed by Papa's cruel words, Mama's slap, Femi's indifference. What do you want? I asked, my voice cold. Papa stepped forward, his eyes blazing. You think you can destroy us, he said, his voice low and dangerous. You cut off the light, the water, everything. Now the landlord wants us out. You happy now? I didn't flinch. You called me a burden, Papa. You threw me out on Christmas Eve. I'm just doing what you wanted, staying out of your life. Mama gasped, her hand flying to her chest. Ilara, how can you talk like that? We're your family. We made mistakes, yes, but you can't abandon us. Abandon you? I said, my voice rising. You abandoned me. I paid for everything, rent, bills, Femi's fees, and you treated me like nothing. You slapped me, Mama, for asking Femi to help. You threw me out, Papa, like I was trash. And you, Femi, I turned to my brother, who flinched under my gaze. You laughed. You never cared. Femi mumbled something, his voice barely audible. Sis, I'm sorry. I didn't mean. Sorry doesn't fix this, I cut him off. You're here because you're desperate, not because you care. The courtyard had gone quiet, neighbors peeking from their doorways, drawn by the drama. Mama Ngozi appeared behind me, her presence a silent pillar of support. Ilara, you okay? She asked, her voice firm. I nodded, my eyes still on my family. I'm fine, I said. They were just leaving. Papa's face darkened, but he didn't move. Mama's tears started again, loud and theatrical. Femi shifted uncomfortably, his hands stuffed in his pockets. They stood there, a tableau of desperation, but I felt no urge to fix their mess. Not this time. I shut the door, the click of the latch echoing in my small room. Their voices lingered outside. Mama's sobs, Papa's low muttering, Femi's quiet pleas, but I leaned against the door, my heart pounding. Memories flooded me, the laughter over shared plates of jollof rice, the late-night talks with Mama about her tailoring dreams, the rare moments when Papa smiled and called me his strong girl. But those moments were drowned out by the sting of Mama's slap, the weight of Papa's burden, the cold indifference of Femi's smirk. I slid to the floor, my back against the door, and let the tears come. Not for them, but for the girl I'd been, the one who'd given everything, hoping for love in return. The one who'd believed family meant sacrifice, no matter the cost. That girl was gone, replaced by someone stronger, someone who refused to be invisible. Mama Ngozi knocked softly, her voice muffled through the door. Ilara, open. Let me see you. I wiped my eyes and let her in. She took one look at me and pulled me into a hug, her wrapper smelling of palm oil and home. You do the right thing, she said, her voice firm. Dem no deserve you. I know, I whispered, my voice thick. But it still hurts. She nodded, her hand warm on my shoulder. It go hurt for a while. But you no go carry their load again. You hear? I nodded, her words anchoring me. Closing the door on them wasn't just about shutting them out, it was about opening a door to myself. For the first time, I felt the weight of their expectations lift, replaced by a fragile but growing sense of freedom. That night, I lay on my mattress, the generators hum a distant lullaby. The pain was still there, but so was the fire. They'd pushed me out, but I was building something new, something they couldn't touch. 2 weeks later, life took an unexpected turn. I was at the textile factory, stitching a batch of Ankara dresses, the hum of the machines a familiar rhythm, when my supervisor, Madame Esther, called me to her office. Her stern face softened as she spoke. "Ilara, you've been consistent," she said, her voice clipped but warm. "The management noticed. We're promoting you to team lead, better pay, better hours." I blinked, stunned. "Madam, thank you," I managed, my voice shaking. The raise was significant, enough to start saving, maybe even dream of a future beyond Adekunle's concrete walls. As I left the office, my phone buzzed with another text from Femi. "Sis, we day sleep for cousin's house now. Landlord lock our place. Please, help us." I deleted the message without replying. Their purgatory was their own making. While they scrambled, I was rising. The contrast was stark, almost poetic. I'd spent years keeping their lives comfortable, but now, as I walked through the factory gates, the Lego sun warm on my face, I felt a surge of pride. I was building a life for myself, free from their demands. That evening, I celebrated with Mom Ngozi and her children, sharing a pot of egusi soup and laughter in the courtyard. Tund, her youngest, toasted me with a cup of zobo, his gap-toothed grin infectious. "Auntie Ilara, you be boss now," he cheered, making everyone laugh. Mom Ngozi raised her cup, her eyes gleaming. "To Ilara," she said. "The girl way no let anybody dim her light." I smiled, the weight of my promotion settling in. Their purgatory was their problem now. Mine was a future I could finally claim. The Adekunle compound was a living, breathing mosaic of life, children shrieking as they chased a deflated football, the sizzle of akara frying in Mom Ngozi's kitchen, the rhythmic thud of a neighbor's pestle pounding yam. I sat on a plastic stool in the courtyard, a plate of jollof rice balanced on my lap, surrounded by Mom Ngozi's children and a few neighbors who become my unexpected allies. The air was thick with the scent of charcoal smoke and laughter, a stark contrast to the cold silence of my family's bungalow on Olodi-Apapa Road. My promotion at the Acacia textile factory had brought a new rhythm to my days. More responsibility, better pay, and a budding sense of purpose. But it was here, in this noisy, crowded compound, that I found something I hadn't realized I'd been missing, a family forged not by blood but by respect. Mama Ngozi plopped down beside me, her wrapper vibrant against the fading evening light. "Ilara, you day shine oh," she said, her grin wide. "See as you day smile now. No more that heavy face." I laughed, the sound freer than it had been in months. "Now you make me smile, Mama Ngozi. You and your children." Her daughter Amaka, braiding a neighbor's hair nearby, chimed in. "Auntie Ilara, you be our sister now. No dulling." Tund, her gap-toothed 7-year-old, tugged at my arm. "Auntie, you go buy me ice cream with your new money?" His eyes sparkled with mischief, and the courtyard erupted in laughter. "Only if you stop stealing my yam," I teased, ruffling his hair. The warmth of their acceptance wrapped around me like a blanket, easing the ache of my family's betrayal. For years, I'd poured my sweat and salary into Mama, Papa, and Femi, only to be called a burden. Here, in this cramped compound, I was seen, truly seen, for the first time. Later, as we cleared the plates, Mama Ngozi pulled me aside. "I hear say your people day scatter," she said, her voice low. "Dem day live with one cousin for Ikoradu now. No house, no nothing." I nodded, the news settling heavily. "They got what they chose," I said, my voice steady. "I'm done carrying their load." She studied me, her eyes soft but sharp. "You strong, Ilara. But don't let anger make your heart hard. Live your life, but live it for you." Her words lingered as I lay in bed that night, The generators hum a distant lullaby. The compound's noise faded, and I felt a quiet peace. I wasn't just surviving, I was building a new family, one that valued me for who I was, not what I could give. Months later, I found myself taking a different route home from the factory, the Okada weaving through Lagos' chaotic traffic, danfo horns blaring, street hawkers shouting, the air thick with exhaust and roasted corn. On impulse, I asked the rider to pass through Olodi-Apapa, my old neighborhood. As we slowed near the familiar bungalow, my breath caught. The house was a ghost of its former self. The once bright paint was peeling, curling like old skin. The windows were dark, some boarded up, others cracked. The gate, once polished by Papa's obsessive cleaning, sagged on its hinges. Weeds choked the small compound, and the silence was eerie, unbroken by the usual hum of the generator or Mama's sharp voice. I paid the rider and dismounted, standing across the street, my heart a tangle of emotions. This was the house where I'd grown up, where I'd laughed over shared meals, cried over Mama's scoldings, and dreamed of a future I thought I'd build with my family. But it was also the house where Papa had called me a burden, where Mama's slap had stung my cheek, where Femi's indifference had cut deeper than words. A neighbor, Mama TT, spotted me as she carried a bucket of water from the borehole. "Ilara," she called, her face lighting up. "You day look fine oh. Wetin you day do here?" I smiled, though it felt tight. "Just passing by," I said. "What happened to the house?" She sighed, setting the bucket down. "Your people move out after the landlord lock am. Dem no fit pay rent. Now dem day with one cousin for Ikoradu, I hear. The house just day waste." I nodded, my eyes tracing the empty windows. "They made their choices," I said, more to myself than to her. Mama Titi studied me, her expression softening. "You no be like dem, Ilara. You get sense. You day shine now." Her words were a small comfort as I walked away, the Okada's engine roaring as I headed back to Ajigunle. The empty house was a stark reminder of their choices, and mine. I'd stopped enabling them, and they'd crumbled. But instead of guilt, I felt a quiet resolve. This was their consequence, not my burden. The weeks that followed were a blur of work and newfound purpose. At the factory, I thrived as team lead, guiding my colleagues through rush orders, my hands steady as I stitched intricate patterns. The extra pay meant I could afford small luxuries, a new wrapper, a better phone, even a savings account that grew each month. But more than that, it was the peace that settled over me, a calm I hadn't known in years. One evening, I sat in the courtyard with Bio Dunn, the mechanic from my old neighborhood, who'd stopped by to fix Mama Ngozi's generator. The air was cool, carrying the scent of rain and fried fish. He sipped a Maltina, his eyes glinting with curiosity. "Ilara, you hear about your family?" he asked, leaning back on a bench. "Dem day struggle oh. Papa day sell his old Peugeot to pay debts." I stirred my bowl of pepper soup, the spicy aroma grounding me. "I heard," I said. "They're in Ikoradu now, right?" He nodded. "Dem day squeeze for one small room with cousin. Mama day complain every day. Femi day vex say he no fit study. You no feel bad." I paused, the question heavy. Did I feel bad? There was a time when their suffering would have crushed me, when I'd have run to fix their mess. But now, I saw it clearly. Their downfall was a direct consequence of their actions. I'd spent years enabling their ingratitude, and when I stopped, their world collapsed. "No regrets," I said finally, meeting his gaze. "Only lessons. I learned I'm not their ATM. They learned they can't treat people like nothing and expect everything." Bio Dunn whistled, a grin spreading across his face. "You don't change, Ilara. You get fire now." I smiled, the fire in my chest a steady flame. "Maybe I always had it," I said. "I just needed to stop letting them dim it." As we talked, the courtyard filled with neighbors, their laughter and chatter a reminder of the community I'd found. There was no triumph in my family's struggle, no glee in their pain, just a quiet understanding that I'd done what I needed to survive. And I was thriving. One quiet Sunday, I stood in my small room, staring at my reflection in a cracked mirror propped against the wall. The girl looking back at me was different, stronger, surer, her eyes bright with a confidence I hadn't known before. The peeling paint and concrete walls no longer felt like a cage but a canvas, a space where I could paint my own future. I thought of the years I'd spent measuring my worth by what I could give, money, time, energy, all to a family that saw me as a burden. Every paycheck drained into their needs, every dream deferred for their comfort. But now, standing in this room I'd made my own, I understood something profound. I was enough. My value wasn't tied to their demands or their approval. I was enough simply for being me. A knock on the door pulled me from my thoughts. It was Amaka, her braiding mannequin tucked under her arm. "Auntie Alara, you dey come for church?" she asked, her smile infectious. "Mama say you no fit miss pastor's sermon today." I laughed, grabbing my headscarf. "I'm coming," I said, following her into the courtyard. The compound was alive with Sunday morning energy, women in colorful wrappers, children in pressed uniforms, the distant sound of a choir drifting from the church down the street. As we walked, Amaka chattered about her latest hair designs, her dreams of opening a salon someday. "You think I fit do it, Auntie?" she asked, her eyes wide with hope. "Of course," I said, squeezing her shoulder. "You've got talent. Don't let anybody make you feel small." She beamed, and I realized I was speaking to myself as much as to her. The walk to church was short, but it felt like a journey, a step further from the girl who'd been thrown out on Christmas Eve, a step closer to the woman I was becoming. At church, the pastor's sermon was about forgiveness, about letting go of pain to embrace God's plan. I listened, my heart heavy but open. Forgiving my family didn't mean returning to their cycle of demands. It meant freeing myself from their hold, choosing peace over resentment. I was enough, and that was my power. The Lego skyline glittered under the setting sun, a tapestry of concrete and dreams stretching across the horizon. I stood on the rooftop of a friend's building in Yaba, invited to a small gathering of factory colleagues and adjugunal neighbors. The air was warm, carrying the scent of suya grilling nearby, the distant hum of traffic blending with the laughter around me. I leaned against the railing, a bottle of Zobo in hand, and let the moment sink in. Below, Legos pulsed with life, hawkers weaving through traffic, neon signs flickering to life, the city's chaos a symphony of possibility. For the first time, I didn't feel like I was fighting to survive. I was living. Mama Ngozi joined me, her presence a steady comfort. "Ilara, you dey look far," she said, her voice teasing. "Wetin you dey see for that skyline?" I smiled, my eyes tracing the city's glow. "The future," I said. "My future." She nodded, her grin proud. "You don find your way, my girl. Dem try to break you, but you stronger than dem all." I thought of my family, cramped in their cousin's room in Ikorodu, their lives unraveling without my support. There was no joy in their struggle, only a quiet acknowledgement of the lesson. Actions have consequences. They'd called me a burden, but I'd become their nightmare, not out of malice, but by choosing myself. As the party grew louder, Amaka dragged me to dance, her laughter infectious. Bio Dunn spun a story about a customer's broken motorcycle, and Tund demanded I share my Zobo. The rooftop was alive with connection, with people who saw me, valued me, loved me for who I was. The past was a painful lesson, etched in the sting of Mama's slap, Papa's cruel words, Femi's indifference. But it was over. My nightmare, the years of sacrifice, the weight of their expectations, was done. Theirs, born of their own choices, had just begun. I looked out at the skyline again, a sense of hope bubbling within me. The future was mine, bright with possibilities I could finally embrace. I was no longer their burden. I was Alara, and I was enough. The end.